You know, it was by far one of the greatest diversionary tactics that my daughter had in her toolbox. When she had used every other possible tool and tactic to avoid going to bed and to sleep, she would pull out the big one. She'd ask deep theological questions. And let me assure you that the apple of my eye could ask some deep theological questions. And one of her all-time favorites, it's simply perfectly simple and profound, is just 3 words. Who made God? Now, I have to tell you, having been to seminary, an educated man, that I have the answer to that. No one, sweetheart. God isn't made. He's not a created being. But the problem with that answer is that as soon as you gave that, questions would come from her like water from a fire hose. How could he not be made? Then where did he come from? What do you mean he existed before time? How could he just be? God doesn't have a mom or dad, but isn't God Jesus' dad? So Jesus has a dad, but God doesn't have a dad. How does God know how to be a dad if he doesn't have it? And the questions continue. Now, one of the great things when you're dealing with a 5-year-old who it's well past their bedtime and they've already had 12 warnings, let alone 3, is you can simply say, be quiet, go to sleep, I love you, good night. But believe it or not, the question that my daughter used to ask in bed, who made God? It's at the center of a conversation between Jesus and a friend of his named Martha concerning the death of her brother Lazarus. Now, for those of you who weren't with us last week or have forgotten, a couple thousand years ago, there lived a man named Jesus. The most important thing I can tell you about him is that he's the Son of God. When he lived here on earth, when he lived in what we refer to as the Middle East, or what we'd refer to today as Israel, they called Judea back in the day. When he lived there, he had 3 friends. They were siblings, Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. Lazarus was the baby brother. And it was sometime during his ministry that Jesus received word from the sisters Martha and Mary that Lazarus was very sick. In fact, by the time the message had gone off to him, Lazarus was already dead. And the sisters, they wanted Jesus to come heal their brother. And so even though the messenger leaves and Lazarus dies, and you can tell when the message arrives, you can just tell that this is an urgent situation, Jesus stays where he is for 2 more days. Now, why does he wait 2 days? Everybody's got theories, but we really aren't sure. When he does arrive, though, when he leaves with the disciples and he comes to the home of Martha and Mary and Lazarus, he waits on the outskirts of town and he sends word to the oldest of the 3 siblings, Martha, that he's arrived, and she goes out to meet him. And check out that conversation. It is John chapter 11, verse 20 and following. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary stayed in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus told her, your brother will rise again. Yes, Martha said, he'll rise when everyone else rises at the last day. Now, the first part of Martha's response to Jesus is fairly clear-cut. You see, Martha, she's a woman. She can't challenge outright a rabbi, a teacher, somebody in authority, especially a man, and especially someone whom she loves and respects. So to my thinking, when she says to Jesus, if only you had been here, my brother would not die, that was her very subtle way of saying, where were you? Where were you, Lord? And then she says, but even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask. It's quite a statement of faith. Even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask. And that statement stumped me a little bit, I have to tell you, because it does. It sounds like a statement of faith. Even now, even though my brother is dead, I know that God will give you whatever you ask. So go right ahead. Be my guest. Have at it. But when Jesus says to her, your brother will rise again, she doesn't say, awesome, let's go. Get with it. That's great. Go do some raising, Instead, she says, yes, he will rise when everyone else rises at the end of time. See, my guess here is that Martha is stuck. Martha finds herself, interestingly enough, she finds herself in a place that often we find ourselves in, and that is she's not really certain what she can ask for. I mean, she wants to believe that God will give Jesus whatever he asks for, but she doesn't know exactly how much she can expect from God. You see, unlike us, she doesn't have the benefit of the Bible, and she doesn't have the benefit of the Holy Spirit in her. She doesn't even have the benefit of having been trained in Sunday school or Jewish school. She, whatever she's got about the Hebrew Bible, she's got through bits and pieces. And so she's trying to piece together as best she can what it is that she can hope for. And she's trying to figure out what are the limits to the Messiah. The Messiah of God is amazing. She knows that. But what exactly can I ask him to ask God for? And that's when Jesus hits her with one of the biggest self-revealing statements ever made. In verse 25, Jesus told her, I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never ever die. Do you believe this, Martha? I am the resurrection and the life. That statement is what we refer to as an I am statement. There are actually 7 of them. Well, there are a couple more than 7, but 7 noteworthy ones in the Gospel of John. These I am statements. I am the bread of life, John 6:35. I am the light of the world, John 8:12. I am the door or the gate, which is John 10:7 and 9. I am the good shepherd, which is John chapter 10, verse 11, and then again in verse 14. I am the resurrection and life, what we have here in verse 25. I am the way, the truth, and the life, John 14:6. And I am the true vine, which Jesus says both in John 15:1 and John 15:5. Now, the thing that is so important about these statements, aside from the fact that they tell us, each one tells us a great deal about Jesus, is that they are what I call divine statements. They're divine statements because each one begins with ego eimi. Ego eimi. Ego, that's where we get the word ego from. Ego, it means I, and eimi is the Greek for I am. Ego eimi. So you see, normally in Greek, we would just say eimi if we were describing ourselves, like I'm thirsty, or I'm hungry, or I'm tired. You see, when you say ego eimi, it's with an emphasized state. It means I myself am. Or, more importantly, it's translated, I exist. You see, every time that Jesus says ego eimi in the Gospel of John, he's making reference to that passage, that really tough passage that Elijah read for us. By the way, you got the most important part of it right, and that was verse 14. Verse 14, which says in Exodus chapter 3, God replied to Moses, I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. That statement by God, when Moses meets him, I am who I am, when he says, that's my name, I am, when translated into Greek, like the kind of Greek that we find in the New Testament, is translated ego, eimi, hoon. But the most important part of that for us is ego, eimi. I am. Every time Jesus says, I am the bread of life, I'm the light of the world, I'm the resurrection of life, he is identifying with the God of the Hebrew Bible, who is his Father in heaven. You might recall back, and this is one of the times when the I am, he uses I am, and it's not counted as an I am statement. It's in John chapter 8. You might recall he says, when the crowd was ready to stone him, they were ready to stone him because he said, before Abraham, I am. It's because he was claiming identity with God the Father. Check out what St. John Chrysostom said some 1,700 years ago, give or take, about this very thing. As the Father uses this expression, I am, ego, eimi, so also does Christ. For it signifies continuous being, irrespective of all times. In other words, Jesus' I am claims imply divine, eternal existence. So back to our narrative, okay? Back to the story with Martha. Martha is obviously struggling. I mean, she's just lost her baby brother, right? Her brother's dead. She doesn't know where her friend Jesus has been, who is more than amazing and always helpful in these kinds of situations, but he's been nowhere to be found. She doesn't fully get Jesus' connection with God. She knows there's a connection. She believes he's the Messiah. She just doesn't know exactly what that gets you in this life. And she believes that God will give Jesus whatever he asks for, but she's just not totally certain if it's okay to ask for what she really wants, or if it's wrong to ask for what she really wants. Is there a limit to what she can hope for God through the Messiah? And then when Jesus says Lazarus will rise again, she, to the best of my knowledge, the best of my thinking, assumes that Jesus is talking about the end of time when everyone is erected. So maybe she can't ask for her brother back just now. Maybe the spiritual thing to do is just celebrate the fact that he'll, rise at the last day, right? And when she says she knows he'll rise again at the last day when everyone else does, I'm not persuaded that anybody else in that situation would be just ready to settle for that answer. But that's just me reading into it. I don't know that for certain. But then Jesus identifies himself with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by saying, I am the resurrection and the life. When Jesus says, I am, we've established that he is identifying with God of the Hebrew Bible, his Father. He's also answering the question that my daughter pulled out oftentimes at bedtime. Who made God? No one made God. Why? Because God isn't a created being like you and me. God is the creator, and as the creator God, the great I am, he is self-existent. That's what he's telling us. When he says, I am, he's self-existent. He's self-sufficient. He's self-fulfilling. He is self-contained. He needs nothing, just like the song we were singing. He needs nothing from no one at no time. God needs nothing from anyone at any time. Period. St. Irenaeus, the Bishop of Lyon, back in the 3rd century, said some profound stuff about the self-sufficiency of God. He said, as the originator of life, God does not need what he originates, for he's uncreated, without beginning or end, and separate from the creature. He does not need our possessions, our communion, our fruits, our offerings, our gifts, our oblations, our allegiance, our love, our obedience, our sacrifices, our service, our good works. Even the incarnation satisfies no need in God. God has no need. The creature, however, stands in great need. Humans, for example, need many instruments to produce their intentions, but far more fundamentally, they need the Creator, and they need to be related properly to Him. Jesus is part of the Trinity, and that requires nothing to exist. The Trinity requires nothing to exist. Creator God is totally free. You want to talk about real freedom? Creator God is totally free. He is the self-existent one. So when Jesus tells Martha that he is the resurrection and the life, he isn't just saying that he resurrects people and he gives life, but he says, he's telling her that he is the personification of resurrection and life. By him, both the dead rise and the living live. Jesus doesn't need life. He is the source of life. He is the giver of life, the sustainer of life. And because he is all of those things, then death is not the final word. Jesus is the resurrection, making death an experience and not an ending, a pause but not permanent. Don't misunderstand, death is still painful, as we will see next week, even for Jesus. But as the Apostle Paul wrote, we do not grieve as those who have no hope. And the second half of Jesus' statement carries significant weight. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never, ever die. Do you believe this, Martha? Jesus has just said, I am the resurrection and the life, but he's not finished. He says, everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? Let's just take that apart for just a second. One phrase at a time. Everyone who lives. Not just everyone who has ever lived, not just someday in the sweet by and by, but this is now. This is for people who are breathing and stumbling and doubting and hoping and praying their way through life. This is for those of us still here, still moving, still standing, even just barely. And believes in me, not believes something about me, not agrees with a creed or a set of traditions, but believes in me, leans on me, trusts me. When the road makes no sense and the stone is still in front of the tomb, kind of belief. Shall never die. Now, we've got to be honest. People who believe in Jesus still get cancer. They still have heart attacks. They still stop breathing. But Jesus isn't saying that the body won't die. He's saying that death doesn't get the last word. It might get a line or two, but it doesn't get the ending. You see, because of Jesus' statement, death is no longer the executioner. He's just the usher. He moves us from here to him. And he asks her, do you believe this? He doesn't ask, do you understand this? He just asks, do you believe me? Not, do you feel brave today? Not, do you feel hopeful right now? Just, do you trust me? That's what he asked Martha, and that's what he asks us. Let me just circle back to where we started. My daughter once asked, Daddy, who made God? And the answer is nobody. Nobody made God. That's what makes him God. He is. He always has been. He always will be. And that's why we can trust him. We can trust God because God is not running out of life. He's not waiting to become something greater. He is the resurrection. He is the life. And when he asks you, do you believe this? Then maybe we should say like another man he asked once, do you believe this? Who said, yes, I believe. Help my unbelief. And I hope you think about that, okay?